correction here, because we are seeing that similar kind of consolidation breakout, but we got some kind of bottoming patterns of developing each time the consolidation happens.
That's right. So as we can tell here, it's a very clear bullish pattern. Now, the only difference between this one so far and the previous two is we haven't got the full extension yet. Now, there's a very important point here, is that the timing of when these breakouts occurred, which are at the very beginning stages of the fourth quarter, 2023, 2024, so here we are again right now. That's because there's been positive seasonality for Bitcoin over its history, over the last 10 years of
in the fourth quarter especially.
In the fourth quarter.
And if you're watching this after the XRP XLM analysis video we just watched, then your mind is probably still replaying one or two lines from that expert, especially the part where he said the upcoming price projection is something people won't believe until it actually happens. But that's the thing about crypto. The truth often sounds unbelievable right before it becomes real. So let's talk about it. Let's break down exactly what this technical analysis expert revealed and why it sent shockwaves across both XRP and XLM communities. Because if what he's seeing on the charts is even halfway accurate, then every hesitation, every doubt, every sleepless night over your portfolio might be leading to something much bigger than what the market is currently pricing in. Let's start with the real part, the human part, because no chart pattern exists in a vacuum. People invest in XRP and XLM not just because of indicators, candles, or Fibonacci extensions. They invest because these assets carry a story, a narrative of real-world utility.
Equities that are hitting the market.
Well, the beauty of these companies is that they're launching securities that appeal to a wide range of investors.
And a sense that they're tied to something much larger than themselves. You feel it every time you read about cross-border transactions getting cheaper, or when governments start quietly testing blockchain rails, or when another major bank plugs itself into ISO 20022 rails that XRP and XLM are literally built for. So when a technical analyst, someone who usually avoids hype, suddenly drops a prediction that sounds crazy, wild, or too good to be true, it hits differently. Because it aligns with something holders already feel in their gut, even if they haven't said it out loud. That's what happened here. He didn't just give a number. He gave a scenario, a window into what might be forming in real time. The expert's entire prediction came from a single chart setup, one that almost always precedes a violent breakout in long-suppressed assets. He pointed to multi-year compression, falling wedge formation, tightening liquidity zones, repeated higher time frame bullish divergences. And yes, both XRP and XLM are showing almost the same pattern. Almost like twins catching their breath before running. Now here's the wild part. The expert said this compression is one of the tightest he has ever seen on a top 100 crypto asset. And usually, when the chart coils up this hard, the resulting breakout isn't small. It's something that can erase years of stagnation in a single sudden surge. He compared it to XRP's 2017 breakout, XLM's 2017 vertical explosion, Link's breakout from 2019's compression zone. Every time these patterns formed, something massive followed. Because price isn't the only thing tightening. Liquidity, sentiment, and patience are tightening too. That's the combination you want right before money starts flooding in. So here's the part everyone is talking about. The analyst said that if XRP and XLM break out of this multi-year coil with momentum, not a small bounce, not a dead cat, not a short-lived pump, but a true breakout, then the targets are not 2x or 3x. They're much, much higher. He used a very specific phrase. The market still hasn't priced what these charts are telling us. That line alone has people rewatching the clip. Because when a TA expert says something like that, it's not speculation. It's conviction. He then pointed to the measured move targets from the wedge and the macro Fibonacci extension, both aligning around ranges that shocked viewers. Numbers that many people would be afraid to even mention publicly for fear of being labeled delusional. But he backed it with data. Not emotions. Not wishful thinking. Actual chart structure. And that matters. Because TA doesn't predict the future perfectly, but it does reveal pressure, momentum, and long-term cycles. And right now, both XRP and XLM are showing the exact same long-term setup. The setup that historically appears right before the candles go vertical. Most retail investors can't imagine dramatic upward movement in assets that have been boring or flat for years. XRP has been suppressed. XLM has been quiet. XDC, HBAR, QNT, and the rest of the ISO narrative have been in the shadows. People assume that because something hasn't moved recently, it won't move dramatically in the future. But markets don't work like that. They move in phases, not straight lines. And right now, both XRP and XLM are sitting at the end of a long, slow build-up phase. The accumulation zone, the boring zone, the zone where only patient investors survive. That's why these predictions hit so hard. Because the charts are saying something people aren't used to hearing. The quiet phase is ending. In this video, we're going to break down the exact price ranges the expert pointed to, why the breakout window is opening now, how macro liquidity, institutional movement, and ISO rails tie into the prediction, and why he said, most people will only understand when it's too late. So in that XRP XLM video we just watched, the expert dropped a line that stuck with a lot of people. Most won't understand what's coming until XRP and XLM are already gone. Now, that wasn't arrogance. It wasn't hype. It was a warning about how markets behave right before a major shift, and why the window we're entering right now is different from anything holders have seen in years. Because in this phase, charts don't whisper. They shout. Liquidity doesn't drift slowly. It snaps. And when the breakout arrives, the move is so fast that most people don't even have time to adjust. This is exactly what the expert was trying to show. And section 2 is where we break down the prediction he made, in precise terms, without exaggeration, and why he believes XRP and XLM are heading toward a moment that refines their entire market identity. In the analysis video, the expert didn't dance around the numbers. He gave the actual price zones. And the truth is, the reason they sounded unbelievable is because they were based on logic, not hype. The first chart he showed was the macro wedge breakout target. According to this, if XRP breaks above the upper resistance and confirms it as support, the first reasonable target range was a range that lines up with the 2017 breakout structure and the 1.618 Fibonacci extension, which aligns with its previous wave structure and its multi-year resistance flip. Now here's the part that made some viewers raise their eyebrows. Those were the conservative numbers. The phase 1 breakout. The small move before the big move. The expert then pulled up 2 more time frames. The high time frame Fib 3.618 and the full extension wave from the multi-year compression. This is where things went from believable to shocking. He said, if the structure completes fully, not partially, not weakly, but fully, then XRP and XLM would be looking at much larger targets that reflect the true scale of the breakout. He paused there, almost as if waiting for viewers to reject what he was saying. But no one did because he backed it with math, not emotion. And this is the part most people misunderstood. He wasn't predicting moon levels tomorrow. He wasn't promising anything. He was laying out probabilities based on historical fractals, liquidity zones, macro compression, and market structure. What he showed wasn't fantasy. It was the same pattern that Bitcoin showed in 2012. The same pattern Ethereum showed in 2016. The same pattern Chainlink showed in 2019. A boring, frustrating, sideways period, followed by a sudden, violent expansion that practically redefines the asset. XRP and XLM are standing in that exact place. It's not just the charts. The price setup exists because the fundamentals, timelines, liquidity cycles, and macro triggers are all pointing in the same direction. Here's what the expert highlighted. XRP has survived one of the harshest regulatory battles in crypto history. Whether people love Ripple or hate them, the truth is that XRP is no longer in the same legal uncertainty it was in years ago. That alone changes liquidity perception. XLM never had that kind of legal pressure, but it has something else. Growing institutional adoption through MoneyGram, humanitarian corridors, remittances, and CBDC pilots. When regulation stops suppressing liquidity, price moves differently. This is key. ISO 20022 went from future adoption to live testing to financial institutions fully migrating into real-time payment rails. And what did the experts say? People always underestimate assets that solve problems institutions actually have. XRP and XLM solve cross-border settlement, liquidity bridging, fast messaging, interoperability, asset tokenization, and they solve it using rails that traditional banks are now forced to modernize. This doesn't guarantee price moves, but it does unlock the environment where price finally can move. This was one of the experts' strongest points. When liquidity returns to crypto, it doesn't go to the already pumped assets first. It goes to undervalued, ignored, suppressed, silently accumulating assets. He gave 3 examples: Solana in 2023, Matic in 2021, XRP in 2017. All 3 looked dead before exploding. XRP and XLM are the longest repressed major altcoins in the market. And historically, the assets with the longest accumulation, the strongest fundamentals, and the tightest compression are the ones that explode hardest during liquidity expansion. That's why he said the prediction won't be believed until the candles start running. One of the most important parts of the TA breakdown was the 3-phase breakout model he outlined. This is what gave his prediction structure and credibility. He said XRP and XLM are preparing for 2x to 4x range. The first breakout shock. It pulls in traders, wakes up sideline money, and breaks multi-year resistance. For XRP, that means $1.80 to $4. For XLM, 60 cents to $1.20. This is where 90% of people say, okay, fine, maybe they're not dead. 5x to 10x range. This is the move that comes only after consolidation at new levels. It's less emotional, more structural. This is the institutional repricing phase. For XRP, $7 to $12. For XLM, $2 to $3.50. He said this is the phase people won't believe until they see it. 10x to 20x range. This only happens if the macro cycle aligns perfectly. For XRP, $12 to $18. For XLM, $3.50 to $5 and above. He emphasized, this is not guaranteed. This is a structural possibility. But even the possibility is enough to shake the market awake. When the XRP and XLM video we just watched ended, you could feel it, that strange heaviness in your chest that comes when something finally clicks. Because it is one thing to hear predictions, but it is another thing entirely to understand why those predictions might actually play out. And that is what we are diving into right now, the part that most people skip. The part that determines who gets caught sleeping and who is already in position when the chart wakes up. The expert said something that sounded simple, but the more you sit with it, the more it hits. When markets compress this tightly, they do not drift upward slowly. They snap. And if you've watched crypto long enough, you know he is right. We have seen it happen with Bitcoin more than once. We have seen it happen with Ethereum before its major runs. And we have seen it with Solana when it came back from the dead. Every single time, the pattern is the same. A long, boring, painful compression, followed by a violent expansion that makes people question reality. XRP and XLM are in that stage right now. And the expert explained why the next move might be faster, sharper, and more emotional than anything holders have experienced before. It is not because of hype. It is not because of speculation. It is because of structure. He talked about something most retail traders never pay attention to: liquidity vacuum zones. These are areas in the chart where price barely left any meaningful resistance in the past. They act like empty space. And when price moves into that empty space, it does not walk, it runs. XRP has one of the biggest liquidity vacuums in the entire top 50 cryptocurrencies. XLM has a similar structure, just slightly narrower. He described it like this: imagine trying to slow down a car on a road with no friction. You can hit the brakes, but the car is still sliding. That is exactly how price behaves when it enters these zones. There is nothing to grab onto. No resistance. No psychological walls. It is just open air. And the only thing that stops it is exhaustion, not opposition. Now, this is where things get interesting. The expert said that if XRP breaks above the major multi-year ceiling, the same one it has been trapped under for almost a decade, the next meaningful resistance is far above it. When he translated this into text-to-speech, friendly language, the idea becomes clear. After that breakout, the actual resistance does not show up until the middle single-digit range. That is why he used the phrase awakening move in the video. But here is the part that people underestimate. XLM has the same setup, just with a slightly flatter compression. The expert said this might create something he called a tandem breakout, meaning both assets could move within the same cycle, feeding off the same liquidity wave, creating a shock effect across the market. He also explained why this particular cycle is different. In the past, when XRP or XLM had breakout potential, the regulatory environment was chaos. It was like trying to launch a rocket during a storm. Even if the engine was strong, the wind could push it off course. But now, the storm is not the same. XRP has legal clarity that did not exist before. XLM has institutional rails that are actually live, not hypothetical. That difference matters. Another thing he emphasized, market rotation. Most retail traders have this habit of chasing whatever pumped yesterday. But smart money rotates into assets that have not exploded yet. Assets that are undervalued, underhyped, and quietly accumulating strength. XRP and XLM both fall perfectly into that category. That is why he believes this breakout, when it begins, will feel inevitable in hindsight. Then he went deeper into something a lot of people overlook, supply structure. XRP's circulating supply is large, yes, but it is not infinite. And every corridor that integrates XRP decreases available liquidity. The expert described it beautifully. Utility is consumption, not destruction, but removal from the open market. And he is right. When banks, remittance companies, and liquidity providers use XRP or XLM, it is not the same thing as retail trading. Those tokens start to sit in operational pipelines, not on centralized exchanges waiting to be sold. That creates a supply squeeze, a slow one at first, but then one day it suddenly becomes real. He explained it with a simple example. Imagine a store that stocks 100 apples. People normally buy 2 or 3 a day. Then one random day, 20 people walk in at once wanting 10 apples each. Suddenly, the store does not have enough supply to meet the demand, and the price jumps. That is how supply shock works. Not with noise, with sudden, overwhelming imbalance. Now combine that with a breakout structure that has been building for nearly 1 full decade. Combine it with global payment rails shifting into real-time systems. Combine it with institutions that are finally allowed to touch these assets without fear. Combine it with retail investors who have been asleep for years, suddenly waking up when they see green candles they have not seen since the early days of crypto. That is why the expert said the breakout might not be gradual. It might be explosive. He warned that the biggest trap will be emotional, not technical. Because when XRP and XLM start moving quickly, people will hesitate. They will doubt themselves. They will wait for the perfect entry that never arrives. They will expect pullbacks that do not come. And by the time they feel confident enough to enter, the move will already be halfway done. He said something powerful. By the time people believe, it will be too late to act. This is not financial advice. It is just a description of how humans behave in markets. Fear at the bottom, FOMO at the top, indecision in the middle, and that indecision is where dreams die. He believes XRP and XLM are walking into a cycle where hesitation might cost more than action. Not because the assets will go to unrealistic numbers overnight, but because the speed of the move might not give people enough time to think. People will not believe a breakout is happening until it is already gone. And finally, we will talk about what this means for holders right now, what mindset is required for this next cycle, and how to stay ahead of the emotional traps that wipe out even experienced investors. When the XRP and XLM video we just watched ended, you probably felt that mix of excitement and fear tugging at the same place in your chest. And that feeling is important. It means you understand how close we might be to one of those moments people talk about for years afterward. Every expert prediction, every chart breakdown, every liquidity analysis, it all points to the same thing. Something is building beneath the surface, and whatever comes next will not be gentle. It will not be slow. It will not be polite. It will be a release. And the truth is, most people will not be ready for that release. Not because they do not believe in XRP or XLM, but because they underestimate how markets behave when they finally snap out of years of compression. They think they will have time. They think they will be able to wait for confirmation. But when this thing moves, it will not give anyone time to think. It will just move. And if you blink, you could miss the part of the move that matters the most. So here is the question you have to ask yourself. Are you going to wait until everyone else believes? Or are you going to trust what you already know? Because if you have watched the charts, if you have studied the fundamentals, if you have listened to the experts who actually understand liquidity flows and market structure, then you already feel the tension building. XRP is sitting at levels that have not changed in nearly one full decade. XLM is coiling in a structure that has only ever led to upward expansion. And the world is shifting into real-time payments whether people like it or not. These are not fantasies. These are not hype cycles. These are systems being rebuilt from the ground up. And both XRP and XLM were designed for this moment long before most people even knew what crypto was. But here is the truth. None of this matters if you panic when the candles finally turn green. None of this matters if you second-guess yourself the moment volatility shows up. None of this matters if you let fear steal the opportunity you waited for through the boring years, the hard years, the uncertain years. So this is your moment to get grounded, to breathe, to understand that you do not have to time anything perfectly. You do not have to predict every swing. You only have to know why you are here. And stay centered when others lose their minds. If this breakdown helped you see the bigger picture, if it made the predictions in the XRP and XLM charts feel a little less crazy and a little more possible, then take a second to like this video. Share it with someone who needs clarity instead of chaos. And if you want to stay ahead of the next wave, because it is coming whether people believe it or not, then subscribe and turn on notifications. Because when the next move starts, when XRP and XLM finally snap out of this long sleep, you are going to want someone in your corner breaking it down in real time.